Hello, hello, and welcome to the Explain It podcast. I am your host, Yngrid Hernandez. And today we have an amazing guest who focuses on what I think is a very, very tough part of our market, like our industry, and it requires somebody with huge empathy and understanding of how and what the experience looks like for a seller. And I'm talking about pre-foreclosures. So without further ado, we're going to have Kreative Mike come up here. Although I'm going to say it, his name is actually Michael Malisco, right?
Yeah, you said it really well. Yeah.
Okay. But you can find him as Kreative Mike on Instagram, with Kreative being a K. Thank you for being on the podcast today. Where are you joining us from?
So I'm joining you guys from the Chicago suburbs. Currently in an area called South Elgin, but I'm normally in Glen Ellen, so it's a little further out, a little further out than my typical location. So, but yeah, the suburbs, yeah, for sure.
Right on. Well, cool. Michael, I know that when people are getting started in real estate, especially if they're in investing, in the investing space, they're always asking, like, what are the best leads? And would you say arguably leads that are in pre-foreclosure, or what are your thoughts?
What are my thoughts? My thoughts are the best leads that you call and and follow up on, right? Those are going to be your best leads. Pre foreclosures are a great source of leads, but it definitely takes time and, like you said, empathy and making sure that you understand the person's situation and where they're looking to go. Before you come in there and you state that you're trying to buy their house. So you're looking to be a servant first versus a buyer. So you're looking to serve them, just like Pace Morby says, and everybody else that's successful in our community does. We first serve people, and then we end up, if it's meant to be, and if it's feasible, then of course we purchase their home.
Yeah. Well, I'll reword my thoughts. Maybe I will say the tried and true leads that always make for opportunity, regardless of whether the market is up or if the market is down, is pre-foreclosures. And I had the No One Left Behind challenge this week, which means I am calling agents. And one of the things that we went through this today, actually, during a sub 2 Zoom that I run every Wednesday, is how do you best serve your sellers, right? So if your seller's in a situation where they have to consider selling, what does that look like? And we went through the hierarchy of that, and pre-foreclosures is always on that list in terms of how you can serve them and figure out, like, what can you do to disposition them. But Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, how did you get started in real estate? And by the way, he's deceivingly tall. I met Mike a couple times now, and I'm like, oh, you're like really tall. I didn't realize it.
Yeah, I'm decently tall. I'm not that tall, but I'm up there. So I actually got started in real estate at a very young age, at 18. I got my loan officer's license. Then the crash happened, so I got into corporate banking. I was a banker, a business banker, and then I was a loan officer running about 6 branches for Bank of America. And then I had this opportunity to go to a mortgage broker, and I started learning how to do reverse mortgages, which is a product for seniors over the age of 62. And now you can actually get qualified for over the age of 55. And so I did that in my late 20s, worked for a broker. I learned a lot. Then I started my own mortgage company when I was 30. And I've had a mortgage company since then, doing reverse mortgages. So I have a lot of experience when it comes to finance, and financial products and programs and things of that nature. But this world is completely different. This is a completely different world. So at the end of December 2022, when that year they raised the interest rates like 4 times in a row, it really decimated not only my business but businesses all around. Major layoffs, loan officers losing their jobs, processors, underwriters, and what we were doing was reverse mortgages. So when the interest rates went up, the loan amounts went down of how much they can borrow. So now you have to have like so much equity in your property. So basically, we were stuck between a rock and a hard place where somebody that didn't need a reverse mortgage could qualify for one, but somebody that actually needed one couldn't qualify for one. And
Mm.
so I decided that I never want to be at the mercy of the feds anymore. I do not want to be in a business where interest rates will affect how much money I make or how much money I don't make.
Mm.
And so I started watching Pace Morby videos when I had to lay off a lot of my employees before Christmas time, which was a very huge, very big on my heart. Laying people off before Christmas because I had a few salaried employees. Like I had to lay some loan officers off as well, and I started watching Pace's videos, and I stumbled upon Sub Two, and I stumbled upon Kevin Cho and Pace on one of the videos, and how they go after low equity deals, and I'm like, you know what? I'm sitting here, I'm feeling sorry for myself. I'm like my mortgage company is going down,
Mhm.
but let me give this a shot. And so I started just literally watching just YouTube videos, like nothing else. And started cold calling, got myself actually started cold calling agents with low equity leads under 10% in equity, and I stumbled upon my first deal, and I'll never forget it, Ingrid. Sun City, Arizona, over 55 plus community, 5% interest rate, um, and like one of the hardest deals, right? So, and I'm new in this game. Luckily, I found a good title company in Arizona that worked with me, helped me out, and I managed to find a buyer for that deal. And I assigned my first contract, and I made around $9,000 on it. I'm like, huh, this is pretty cool. And so I started exploring that aspect of the business, and so I've done a lot of creative deals when it comes to seller financing, or just subject to, or hybrid, which is the combination of both subject to and seller financing. And I've done that for a couple of years, which is fantastic. But now I've delved into more pre-foreclosures because I see myself actually building and scaling that business much higher because of how much the actual payouts are or assignment fees are, what you can actually do with them, versus what you cannot do with certain creative deals. And so pre-foreclosures has been something that I've been really strongly working on, and building on, and luckily it's been paying off. So creative financing is fantastic, but of course, the assignment fees are not going to be as high as pre-foreclosure deals, or if you want to buy yourself and relist it on the market, you will make a lot more money doing pre-foreclosures as well. Unfortunately, it is a longer pathway. It takes a lot more calls, a lot more conversations with the seller. But once you get that deal, it could take 5 creative deals to get one pre-foreclosure fee.
Yeah, that's very true, Mike. I love a lot of what you're saying. I think you and I have very similar parallels. The whole reason I started getting curious about investing, by the way, I've had my real estate license at the time for 7 years, and I didn't take the path I thought I was supposed to take. But what really clarified things for me was my having to lay people off myself. So during COVID and during the pandemic issues, like I was in food service, and in food service we were obliterated, right? People couldn't go to restaurants, which is wild to think about it now, like 5 years later. And as a result, we had to lay people off because what we thought was only going to be a few weeks or a couple months, it started, startling, like scaring all of us, right? It's like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a lot longer. And when, to your point, Mike, like somebody else is making that decision for me. My life felt uncertain, being a corporate job person. And I was like, I need to go buy some real estate and figure out how I mitigate this risk. So that was certainly something that opened my eyes. And it sounds like, and obviously you having your own business, laying off your people, I mean, that's tough. What I will say is that is the entrepreneur way, where you saw how things were happening and then you pivoted. Like, that is so critical in anybody's any entrepreneur journey. And the fact that you were able to pivot, that's pretty amazing. So you pivot into real estate, you find YouTube University. One of my highest watched videos was with Kevin Cho. So shout out Kevin Cho, who has left real estate, I believe is what he said. So tell us, like, how did you just like dive into it? Like, what was that experience like?
Yeah, so I mean, as soon as I closed my first deal, the first thing I did was I joined Sub 2. And that year I wanted to cleanse my mind, because I was just so much was going on at that point in my life. So what I started doing was I started traveling and meeting individuals in different states. So I would travel to places like California and meet leaders in California that were doing events. I would travel to places like Nashville and meet Greg Clark that was doing foreclosures.
I love
right?
Greg. Memphis.
Yeah.
Yes.
I traveled to Georgia to meet Abraham Gray. I traveled to Pasadena for Family Promise, where Pace was there. We were all giving back. So I made it my mission to start going to all these different events and meeting people and networking with people and seeing who I can align with and who I can collaborate with. And I cannot tell you how much I've learned by just being side by side with individuals in this business. But I will tell you that what I advocate so much, and this is for people that are new to Sub 2 or new to any sort of community, is put aside the greed, put forward the learning, joint venture, collaborate with individuals that have done what you want to do, that have done something that you know they're better than you want. Because I have joint ventured so many times and collaborated with so many people that I rather make less money, but have also 50% of the less of the stress, and not have to worry about the problems that were going to arise, because I've never done a deal like that before. So just to give you an example, we just recently did a flip here in the Chicago suburbs with a Sub 2 member, and I found a deal, I structured the deal, and we got in it together, and he brought in the construction, all the experience, and we both made out on it very nicely. We literally sold the house like 5 days later after we finished it.
Wow.
Yeah, and we got like 20 offers on it. So it was crazy. But the cool thing is, like, I know my strength. I bring somebody with their strength. We joint venture, and then everybody wins. And that way I can do 10 different deals with 10 different people versus 10 different deals all by myself, and worrying about everything and being stressed out about everything and making sure everything is correct, where I can actually split the pie, right? And just be able to do a lot more than I would if I was just doing it by myself, or with, let's say, I don't know, a VA or something, right? So it's so much different when you're joint venturing with someone else than if you're doing it on your own, especially when it's something new and brand new to you, and you think you got it. Trust me, you don't have it. The easiest deals have the biggest problems sometimes. right? Seriously, yeah.
Well, I love this, Mike. So what you're really reinforcing to everybody is that this business is not done alone. Go and get to learn who you want to be around. I would love to spend some time here, but I definitely know people came in here to learn about foreclosures. But if maybe you can spend a few minutes about how you vet your partners, because I do think, I myself have had good and bad experience in that area, and I think it's important that folks vet out who they're joint venturing with. You don't have to jump into an LLC right away. You can actually do JV documents so that you guys can have like your dating period, if you will. So what are some of the like key highlights you'd want to let folks know about joint venturing or partnering with someone?
Yeah, so it depends what you're joint venturing with, right? Like for example, people join JV with me on Kreative deals all the time, right?
Mm.
And also they'll bring me pre-foreclosure deals. So they know because they see my social media, they see my HUDs, they see me closing deals, they see me responding to different messages. Like I know Kreative, right? So when somebody brings me a Kreative deal and it works out, we just sign a joint venture agreement. That's all we do. So that is the protection that the person bringing me the deal has. That we have a joint venture agreement, and that joint venture agreement goes over to the title company, and then they have it on file. So when the file closes, they know how to split the proceeds. Give you an example. Just recently, you did a JV deal in Fort Myers, Florida. There was 3 people on the deal. There was me and 2 other individuals. One guy brought the deal to another guy, and the guy's like, "Huh, Mike knows how to do this," and they brought the deal to me. And so it was a 40K assignment fee split between 3 people. It was great. We all brought in our experience. The main person was more of a cash wholesaler. The other person is a flipper, also did some wholesaling, but they weren't as knowledgeable about Kreative as I was. And so they brought it to me. And so we just had a simple JV agreement signed. We're all going to split the profits, equally, which is 33.33% equally. And that was all we needed. But I also think that, when it comes to trust and aligning with people, especially when it comes to construction, right? Like for example, if you're JVing with somebody in construction, like you got to find out like if they're doing construction or not, right? You can't just take their word for it, right? Like, hey, what are some of your latest projects? What have you done? What have been some of the problems or challenges that you face with doing a fix and flip, and then also running the numbers with them, because people that are in construction and doing flips, they're very meticulous with their numbers. Like they know if it's a deal or not. So they will not jump right away on something that they know that it's going to take either too long and they're not going to make money on, or it's just not worth it. So definitely vet people that you're going to be partnering up with that are doing flips. Ask them for HUDs, right? It's not bad to ask somebody, hey, can I see a HUD that you've done before? Like, when was the last time you did a flip? What kind of experience do you have in construction? Is it commercial? Is it a single family? Is it multi-unit? Is it ground up construction? Like, what are you exactly doing that could help? What kind of value can you bring to us in this deal? But for me also, just meeting these people, Ingrid. I mean, the guy I did a flip with, Jim Vanny. I met him at a meetup, and we just aligned. I saw him before in the groups. He's also an owners club, and we became really cool, good friends, and I'm like, hey, I got this deal. He's like, I love it. Let's do it, and we partner up, and that was it, and we did the deal together. So, but yeah, you're absolutely right. You don't need an LLC. You could just have a JV agreement. I would probably even go as far as making sure if it's a flip, have the JV agreement recorded, right? I would have it recorded if you really want to be protected. So then next time they pull title, there is a JV agreement that's recorded on title, just to make sure. That's something I would definitely advocate for, because a JV agreement, is great and all, but if it's a bad person on the other side, they could just say, well, just sue me, right?
Yeah, totally.
Right?
So
it
should be a recordable tool. So it just allows for what we just call a memorandum of record. So we want to publicize, and arguably that's a great way for somebody who maybe couldn't. And actually, I've never heard of recording your JV. So this is actually really good for me. Right now, I'm actually vetting, partnering with someone, and they're amazing. Everything about what they've been able to deliver is amazing, but we're doing a JV first before we go all the way, like before an LLC or a fund is created, as an example. And so I didn't realize you could record that. How amazing. I mean, I guess you could record anything, right?
Yeah.
Here lies Michael Malisco, the actual, I don't know. Yeah, like that's interesting. But I love that. I had never thought about that. So this is great. Okay, cool. So I know that people were here to really hear about the pre-foreclosure advice that you might have, especially if that's part of their focus in their business. So, what type of perspective or advice would you have for folks who are getting started in this space? And then, like, what do you think they're the things that they should know?
Yeah, I mean, the things that they should know is just definitely don't overcomplicate it. Don't overcomplicate it. If you're new to this, forget about the systems, forget about everything else. As Pace Morby says, all you need is a Google Doc, Google Sheets, and you're good to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're in your area, literally go to auction.com, write down all the houses that are going up for auction in the next couple of weeks or so. And the best way for you to get a deal is either going to be either door knocking, going out there and actually door knocking, and presenting yourself as somebody that has helped out somebody here in the neighborhood, that wanted to see if they might need some help. And are also, if you want to spend a little bit of money, you can skip trace, or you can go to truepeoplesearch.com, find out their phone number for free. But my advice is literally, like, if you have no money or anything and you just don't want to spend too much money on systems and processes and CRMs, just literally go to auction.com and just write down your closest foreclosure, your closest auctions that are coming up, because those are going to be the people that are going to need your help the most, is the ones that are going up for auction. You can go ahead and find pre-foreclosures, but those people that just got into pre-foreclosure, it might be a longer timeline for them. But the ones that are going up for auction, they need some sort of solution right now. So you can be that solution for them.
Yeah.
But instead of being a buyer, first find out what, like, hey, can you kind of catch me up to speed about what's been going on? I know Wells Fargo has been giving you a hard time. There's an auction date that's set for April 26th. Is there anything I can do to help? And then just be quiet. Especially when you're calling them or when you're door knocking, and then just let them divulge that information. They're going to have some objections, of course, for you, which you have to learn how to have rebuttals for. But most people, depends, how many doors you knock, or how many people you walk up to. You are going to have somebody that says, yes, I do need help. What can you do? And I would also ask questions like, well, have you contacted your bank? What has your bank said? How has your bank been able to help you? Mm-hmm. And you always want to put them in that position on asking, hey, what has your bank done for you so far? Right? So you want to put that bank on the forefront, because you want to make them look like the bad guy, because in essence, they are the bad guy. They're foreclosing, right? But there's a reason they're foreclosing. The customer did something, but remember, customer is always right? So you have to make sure you're on their side and not on the bank side. So find out what has the bank done for them, and also offer, hey, listen, if you don't know what's going on, I was just next door with Jerry, right in your neighborhood. We called the bank and we found out what the status was, and we were able to help him. If you'd like, I can do the same for you. If you have some time right now, we can jump on the phone and we can call your lender and see what's going on. I know exactly which place to go to, and we can speak to the case manager that has your case, and they'll tell us exactly what we need to do.
Yeah. Do you find that maybe you might be uniquely qualified also just because you've had such a strong lender background? Do you leverage that?
You know what? This business is completely different than my lender background. Me understanding certain loans and things like that, yes, it may give me a little bit of an upper hand in this business, but then I still have to learn from scratch, like the being very empathetic, showing emotion, making sure my tonality is on point, making sure that I'm showing them that I'm on their side, not on the bank side. Understanding their objections that they're going to have, and making sure I have the rebuttals that I need to know, which is studying, right? So I mean, it's more of a connection with the person. But yes, those little things, understanding, like, okay, well, what the steps are of the foreclosure, like, hey, have you thought about reinstating your loan, borrowing money from people? Have you thought about Have you tried to get a loan modification? Are you currently working? That's number one question I ask is, are you working? Because if you're trying to get a loan modification, you're not working, well, how are you going to be able to afford the house?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's a question that we always ask. Well, if you're not working, how will you be able to afford the payments? Because if your loan gets modified, it could be the same payment or even higher because the rates are higher now. So if they give you an opportunity to modify this loan, what's going to prevent you from falling back into foreclosure since you're not working? Right?
Mm.
So I kind of let them answer that question for themselves, and let me know like what's the plan there, because then you kind of put them on the spot, about, hey, well, I'm not working, the payment's the same or higher, how can I afford that? And then we start talking about option B and so forth.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So again, just to recap, what you're saying is you have to come with a expectation of service, and if you're really serving the seller, you're first asking, how can you help them keep the house, and then start creating some logical milestones, right? Do you have a job? Like how would you expect to keep it? And see if there's other ways that you might be able to help. I know in this space, whenever I've dealt with pre-foreclosures, for example, and people may not think about this. For the record, I had a short sale that I did in 2010, after the big recession that happened. And so I bought a house way too young at the age of 23. And I really shouldn't have had that house at the time. But it was a great learning experience. And God has a way of giving you certain journeys because it's actually made me a better investor. And one of the things that I talk about is that people only focus on the real estate, and there's so much more happening to them. They may be losing their car. So you might have a car repo. You might have credit cards are now saying all of that is due. I remember when I had my short sale, I had never missed or been late on a credit card payment, and all my credit cards came due. Like, they're constantly reviewing your credit score, and when you're in the middle of a short sale or pre-foreclosure, your credit score takes a dump. And when it takes a dump, the credit cards have a right to request that the balances get paid off ASAP. And that's exactly what happened to me. So I ended up having to go and ask for a debt consolidation company to help me consolidate all that debt and make like a single payment to mitigate it. So that does happen. It does happen. And so you have to keep that in mind when you're dealing with pre-foreclosures. Like, how are they going to pay their grocery bills, right? Like my very, very first deal we did, we had to help that guy put some groceries in his kitchen and pay for cell phone services so that we could get the contract through. Otherwise, he wouldn't have a way to communicate with us. So,
yeah, I actually ended up on one of my deals. I sold a car for the guy that was in his garage for 5 years, just stagnant, just sitting there for 5 years. It was funny. I never forget it. It's an elderly gentleman. He was a veteran. I'm like, you know what? Let me sell this car for you. So I started taking some pictures. Luckily, it was a BMW 740 IL, which 2001, which I never knew was like this collectible, right? So I put it on a Facebook Marketplace. And then I had a bunch of calls. They came in here, and some guy came in here with like a tow truck and everything, and offered like $4,000. I'm like, here you go, sir. Here's your $4,000. Your car is gone. So I actually ended up putting $4,000 in his pocket. And then, like you said, there's more to it. You got to make sure, like we help them pack, we help them move, we help them even find a new place. Like, there's not, they're in such a situation that they've never been in before, and unless you're in that situation, you don't know how it feels. That there's more to it than them just losing the house. Like, they have a family that they're probably supporting. There's kids involved a lot of the times, and so just those little extra steps of like, okay, we'll help pay for your moving, we'll help you find a new place to live, we'll help you connect with the leasing agent, whatever you need. Like, we always say you have our team at your disposal, our entire team at your disposal, so that kind of brings their guard down a little bit as well, is when we offer those extra services.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the reality is, if you help them, whether creative or cash, you're also helping them repair their credit. So if you're able to do that in other functions, and so it's how would you say, or what teams would you want to have in your arsenal if you say you can, my team is at your disposal? What are some of those like verticals that you would want to have and ready to go? So I know like the two that you mentioned that I think are important to me is a junk remover, and sometimes they're the same person, and somebody who's willing to move the seller at a discount and wait to get paid at close. Who else do you think is important to have sort of on your team?
I think you sort of got the main two. Movers, obviously, like you said, the junk removals, a leasing agent. Who else would I say? The other thing I would say is sometimes we would advance money if they need to. So I think that's very important to have on your team. But the way to do it would be just to go ahead and have, like, you have to make sure that if you're advancing money, anything like over $2,000, have some sort of paperwork that you have. One thing that I learned from Greg Clark, which I'm going to shout him out, is that he has escrow instructions, and he also gets a pre-signed quitclaim deed. So in case the seller does default on their terms, he can record that deed based upon the instructions that are given to escrow. So if you're advancing, let's say, I don't know, $2,500 or $5,000 to help them because they need it for a down payment on a new apartment prior to them getting the funds that you're going to give them at close, whatever the case may be, or they need to catch up on some car payments or whatever that is. He always advocates for that pre-signed quitclaim deed and escrow instructions, which I've done myself before because of him. So shout out to Greg Clark because I've advanced about $3,000 before to a seller that just had a bunch of stuff at his house. He just needed the money to pay off some stuff, and he was very stressed out. So we actually ended up advancing him some money, and that's the reason that I got the contract, is because I was willing to do things that other people were not willing to do.
Yeah, I will add this caveat that if you do have that document signed, you will have a harder time with insurance, title insurance, if you let escrow know you've done that. So you don't necessarily let escrow know you've done that, because they have to be able to insure the transaction, and they have to be able to control the deed transferring. I would say it's probably some advanced level stuff. I've had to do something similar. But you always want to have an attorney writing things up, and you also want to make sure that make sure you use somebody experienced. So before you make this decision, this is not, everybody, do your business at your own risk. But obviously, like we mentioned before, make sure you're partnering up with somebody like Mike who understands some of these pitfalls you may fall into unless you have the right rhythm to your transaction.
I agree 100%, and you got to make sure you're working with the right title company, and also every state's different. I'm talking about my state here in Illinois, Chicago.
Yeah.
So our title company had no problem doing it.
Okay.
So make sure you discuss that with your title company, because they're the ones that are going to be preparing it. But yeah, our title company said that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice job. Yes, absolutely. So that is a major gem that Mike just dropped. So I love it. Mike, in terms of your pre-foreclosure experience, what has been maybe one of the most rewarding stories you've had in that space?
Yeah, so I'm pretty new to pre-foreclosures, guys. I know I talk like I know a big game on this one, but I'm pretty new to pre-foreclosures. But I've now I've done a few of them, and I've experienced a lot when it comes to this side. But the most recent deal came from a sub-2 student. So it was he DM'd me on Facebook. And he said, "Hey, I got this deal. They're ready to sign. I just need some help. The auction's in 2 days, and we need to go ahead and get this auction stopped. Can you help me?" I said, yeah. Just give me a call. I answer my DMs a lot as long as they're not too flooded. And we started talking, and he's like, yeah, I got her. She's ready to go. She's ready to sign. And so I'm like, okay, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's go ahead and get it signed. So we got the contract signed, and I called my attorney. I said, hey, listen, I need a foreclosure stopped tomorrow. Right? Or
Mhm.
yeah, and he's like, okay, that's fine, no problem. Where is it? Just send me over what you need done and everything else. And so I think at that point I was actually landing I think I was landing in Phoenix. I think too. Actually, it was weird. I was landing in Phoenix, and he calls me. He's like, "Hey, it stopped." And the other sub two student, he's like, "Hey, she's freaking out because the auction's coming up. Is it stopped?" I'm like, "Yes, it stopped. We got a 60-day extension, but don't tell the seller that because we don't want to give the seller that much time, right? Because we already agreed on a closing date of 30 days,
Mhm.
and so." And so we end up getting 60-day extension on there, and he was happy. We were happy. So then the process started, right? So to kind of like simplify this gentleman's name is Ephraim Fufa. By the way, he's a fantastic guy. So guys, if you're listening to this, he joined Sub Two, I think, in December of like 2024, and this was his first deal. And when I say joint venture and I say collaborate, I mean joint venture and collaborate.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying it was because of me or anything like that, but if he hadn't reached out to me and my attorney would not have filed the motion, the auction would not have stopped, and this lady would have literally lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity. Okay, she owed $92,000 on this property, and this property was worth over 600,000. So if it wasn't for Ephraim following up nonstop with her, then contacting me. By the way, he contacted a lot of people prior to me, but nobody responded. Ingrid,
That's
nobody
total,
re- nobody
bro.
responded.
I get so many people who I am always on my phone in my DMs. Like if you DM me, I will message you back. I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So no, but this gets crazier. So nobody responded to his DMs, and he,
Mhm.
and I responded, and and so we have this deal going, and the seller, unfortunately, has a little bit of a hoarding problem. Okay,
Mm.
and so her house is a total mess. She doesn't like people coming in and out of there. And our focus was to go ahead and wholesale this deal. Right, that was the main objective, is to go ahead and get this deal wholesaled. So we ended up locking it up for 290. Okay,
Mhm.
and we ended up assigning it to a buyer for 460.
Wow.
Yeah. So so the we locked it up for 290 to 460. When the buyer went to go look at the property, he said, I like the property, but I want everything removed from the property before I buy it. So boom, I put my hat on, my junk removal hat on. I start searching for companies. I found a company, and this is where advance payment comes in. I did things in advance because I knew how big the reward was going to be. Plus, we
Right.
would be helping the seller. The seller was living in a very, very bad, unsanitary environment, right? So it was
Mhm.
even bad to her health, bad to her neighbors' health, everybody. I'm surprised
Mhm.
the association there was no violations or anything. To be honest with you, but it was a condo. It's a condo by Wrigleyville, so it's a hot area, like
Oh
hot
yeah.
area. Yeah, so
Mhm.
Chicago Wrigleyville guys, it's a hot area, and
Mhm.
um, and so we got the junk removal company going, and they went ahead and they got it done for $1,700, a hoarding condo, and they got it done in like 4 hours. I was amazed by how fast they got it done, and
Wow.
um, and so we have everything escrow. We call the buyer. We're like, hey, Mr. Buyer, everything's done, everything's clean. He's like, yeah, okay, great, everything's done. And then we run into another hurdle. He told me he has a commercial line of credit, which to me, I thought you just transfer money over and it's like cash, right? Like a regular credit line, like you have a home equity line of credit,
Right.
commercial line of credit, same thing. This commercial line of credit was a little bit different because he had to get approval from his bank that he had all his assets with in order to close on this deal. So it's kind of like, hey, I'm giving you $1 million line of credit, but anything you buy, I have to double check, type of
Got
thing.
it. Yeah.
And so we found that out last minute, and so we had to extend the closing, and then I, of course, already before that, I was already thinking double close transactional lending. We're not going to show the buyer how much we're making on this deal. So I already had a transactional lender lined up. We actually used Alexis Morgan from Peachtree Capital. So shout out to Alexis, and she was fantastic. And we last minute, when we're about to close on this deal, the seller's ID is expired.
Oh,
So
of course.
yeah. So the seller's ID is expired. So I'm like, no way. So I'm like searching. So Ephraim, I'm like, Ephraim, you got to go to her house right now. I'm telling you guys, this is crazy. We're searching everywhere. Like all the DMVs in Chicago are by appointment only. And other ones are for seniors, right? But so she's 62. You have to be 65 to be considered a senior in Chicago to not have to have an appointment with the DMV. So we found one place in downtown Chicago, central downtown, line out the door, like 100 people out the door. She's standing in line. She somehow wiggles her way through, renews her driver's license. We tell the notary the closing's still on. The notary doesn't meet her at her house. She meets her at some kind of Starbucks, and gets the paperwork signed and sends it over to title. And the title does everything, and then we're like, and then the buyer calls me, and then this attorney had some issues too with like the transaction. But overall, guys, I mean, it was well worth it. In the end, after transactional fees, after everything, we ended up this is netting $157,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
And was it a 50-50?
Yeah. And this person that trusted me with all this money.
You ruined him, by the way.
Was only a simple GV agreement. So I got wired $157K. And then I was wiring him his portion. So I was like double checking the wire. I'm like, listen, I'm gonna wire you $100 first. You confirm that you have the wire, and then I'll wire you the rest. And so I wired him the rest of the money, like just 5 minutes later, because I didn't want to mess it up. Right, I'm wiring somebody $77,000 for the very first time as a JV. Right, so that was his first deal after joining Sub 2.
That's why I said you ruined him.
Yeah.
The expectations and the bars set so high. Oh my God. Yeah. That's so cool.
And he's actually here if you want to meet him.
Oh, with you right now in the office.
Yeah, in the other room, yeah.
Oh, that's okay. So this starts as a joint venture and you guys are now just like homies?
Yeah, well, yeah, we're friends and we're doing more deals together. Yeah, I mean, at that point, that trust, when you do something like that with someone, and you go through all of that, we'll go through that kind of experience, and then for him to trust me with all that money, being wired into my account. I mean, who else can you do business with, right?
Yeah, you should yell at him, tell him to get in there. But that's hilarious. I love it. Wow, I love that's like your story you wanted to highlight.
Yeah, I really wanted to highlight him more than me because he put his trust into me. So I just knew what I was doing. Like I knew what I was doing. Yes, I did. I find the buyer. Yes, but he did so much too. He nurtured the seller throughout the whole process. He was literally at her house like every other day, helping her out because she was scared because we were in closing. In Chicago, I always say if you can make it in Chicago real estate, you can make it anywhere. I think Chicago and New York are probably the hardest because we have like all these people, all these attorneys involved, and they all have their personalities, and they all try to up one another, and so I really want to highlight him, Ephraim Fufa, because not only did he bring me a deal, trusted me with the deal, we worked so well together on this deal as a team, it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have made that much money either, right? So it's that's why I just say joint venture, collaborate, and you also have to trust the other person on the other side, because obviously it's a lot of money.
It is. Wow. This is a wonderful story, and really sort of what we're about, right? Is squatting up, finding the people that like your vibe attracts your tribe, as they say. And you're right. Like he found you, you found him. There's so much trust built in everything that you did. Why would you not continue doing business together? It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Kudos. Good. And I said, I had a similar story with somebody who was brand new to real estate, hardly spoke English, and we got his first deal. He got paid $50K. And so, it's one of my favorite stories when I talk about real estate. And it was less about what I made. I made $100,000. Another partner made $100,000, but it came from a pre-foreclosure. So pre-foreclosures have a lot of potential. To your point, Mike, the one thing that people don't talk about is that your debt becomes public when you go to auction. And there's a big case out here in Arizona where the Attorney General is saying that they would rather see sellers go to foreclosure instead of dealing with wholesalers, which I just don't agree with based on what I read. I read the 81-page case, right? So I understood the Attorney General's opinion and perspective, or at least I think I did. And their perspective is that the seller should go through foreclosure, should go through the auction, and then they would essentially get the overage. First of all, the state does not tell the seller that they have rights to the overage. So
Correct.
Who would know? A seller would not know unless they were educated. So I do think if you're going to get into pre-foreclosures, I think that is an opportunity for you to look at if you were unable to stop a foreclosure, to see if there's any overage there, because now you've already created a relationship with the seller. You might as well help them obtain what they could after an auction. But yeah, these have such a big upside in a lot of them, not every one of them. And if they don't have an upside, you guys should be telling these sellers to go short sell. So it's like one or the other, go cash or go short sell. But a foreclosure is so terrible in your credit history, 7 years, it's like a bankruptcy. So it's 7 years of a tough uphill battle with your finances. So good for you, Mike. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, 7 years also, right now landlords are checking your credit completely. So if they see a foreclosure on your record, you're either not going to get the apartment, or they're going to ask you for 2 to 3 months of a deposit up front, or maybe even 6 months up front, right? It just kind of depends, on what the landlord is looking for. So as Ingrid says, you're better off with that short sale. And what you're talking about is the whole surplus of funds, right? Whenever the auction happens. And you're right, like sometimes even like the state has money from like let's say old insurance checks, right? That you don't even know about. You have to go on the state's website to see if you're owed any money, right? So like you're saying, how is a seller how is an average consumer that is not in finance, not in foreclosures, supposed to understand the aspect and the laws behind surplus of funds? Hey, now I can call this. Now I can go to an attorney and I can file for a surplus of funds. All this, and I can get my money back, whatever the difference was that the bank got paid versus what the buyer bought it for. No one knows that. I mean, it's like having it's like another semester in school for some of these people, So it's crazy to think that, because if that was the case, then why do we have billions of dollars sitting in surplus of funds? Who's taking that money, right? Right? The sellers aren't getting letters from the state saying, "Hey, you got $50,000 in surplus of funds," and why aren't they getting those letters? Right? Yeah. That's the question. Yeah. Why aren't they? If they're so keen on the sellers getting their money, then why don't they send out those letters out personally? Because they're the ones that are controlling these auctions, right? So why are they not sending the letters out personally? So I mean, I'm with you on that, and that's actually something that I'm going to be doing as well. Is doing a little bit of surplus of funds as well.
Yeah.
If we're not able to stop the auction.
Yeah, we have a fella who's going to be on the podcast. I don't know when he's scheduled. His name is Israel Miller. He's actually an owners club over with Sub2 and Pace and all of them. And we will be discussing overages. So hopefully if you guys, are fans of the podcast, know that we're going to talk about how do you serve sellers? How do you need to get you might even have to get a private investigator to find sellers, because that's another hurdle the state does have to go through, that sometimes people don't want to be known after they've gone through a foreclosure. So it's harder to find them when there is funds, but they're not actively trying to find you, for the record. This is also another good point. If you allow a wholesaler if you allow a seller go through foreclosure and they have a VA, they are no longer eligible for VA until that debt is paid off. So they have to actually go through a lot of leaps and bounds and hurdles to eventually maybe get that taken off their record if they do foreclose on a VA loan. But it's unlikely. It's very, very tough to get this off your record if you're foreclosed and you're eligible for your VA and it was a VA loan. So that's another reason why we work. And by the way, if you're eligible for a VA, highly likely you're a veteran. So those are people we should be serving, right? So for sure. Ryan asked, do you ever worry about going into other people's homes? He watches a lot of true crime and is a little freaked out. So what's been your experience there?
You know what? I mean, you kind of get used to it. When you're knocking on the door, you kind of step back a little bit more. My main marketing is mostly texting and cold calling. I'll go knock on the door if that is not working out, because a lot of times that person might already have vacated the premises or they might have passed away. So now we have to look for another avenue, a way to find them. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely scary at first. You're kind of, you get the jitters and you knock on the door and you hope nobody answers that door, but it's the more you do it, the better you are. One thing I would say is don't try to overdo it. Maybe go knock on one door your first day, maybe two the next day, but don't try to go ahead and try to knock on 10, 20 doors in one day, because you're gonna exhaust yourself, and then you're probably not gonna want to do it the next day. So I would say take it slowly. If you can, make the phone call first. If you want to even text off of your cell phone, text off your cell phone a simple message, so something stating like, "Hey, I know that because you can find out like who's foreclosing on them. Hey, I know Bank of America has been giving you some problems. I was just helping out a homeowner in the area. Wanted to see if you needed some help." Something as simple as that. Just something very generic, as something as simple as that. And then if you want, if they're local to you, I would first knock on some local doors. Most people, believe it or not, I mean, I went to a guy's house at 9:30 at night, like far from my house. It was very strange conversation. And we're still talking about it because his auction's coming up. But he's got his head in the sand like an ostrich. He doesn't believe it's real. He has a family, which completely understands, where you got to show empathy. But yeah, he's like, I work all the time. I'm only off at 9:30 p.m. So what do? Boom. I told him I'm going to be in your area if at another homeowner's property at 8:30. Was I there? No, but that's but you gotta let them know that you gotta sometimes say things like that you're going to be in the area, because people want to know that you're there, like maybe for a reason, helping somebody else out, right? So that's one thing that I would suggest people to do is, even when you're knocking on the door, say, hey, I was just in the neighborhood, I was helping out another homeowner here in the area. I did notice that Bank of America has been giving you some issues, some problems. I just wanted to make sure that they've contacted you to give you some options and to see how they can help you. Just something as simple as that, Just ask them if they have done that or not, and if they say no, well, then you can start a conversation with them. We'll kind of catch them to speed. What happened here? What have you done so far? And so forth and so forth.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, and there's different approaches. So when you're doing pre-foreclosures, first of all, this is public data. So technically, you could go and get it at your municipality or your county's like office. This information is public record. I think to Mike's point, and what we've been taught is that, like, generally speaking, you want to get there first. So it's called a notice of default, the NOD list, and this list becomes available publicly. And if you're one of the first ones to door knock and that seller is receptive at that point, you're going to be likely to get under contract. Now, in the state of Arizona, it's a 3-month process for pre-foreclosures. So before they go and get foreclosed on, right, in total, and the property goes into auction. The first 2 to 3 weeks when the first NOD comes out is when the seller is most receptive. From that point all the way to the middle, and I would say from a month to 2 weeks before auction, they don't want to hear it. Their head is in the sand. It's very rare, not rare, it's less likely, but not rare, that you'll get under contract because they're going to get inundated. They're going to have, everybody now has that data, and now everybody's reaching out, whether it's door knocking, phone calls, emails, whatever, however they can get them. Arguably, not enough people are doing direct mail, hint, hint, but it is expensive. And then the last 2 to 4 weeks before their auction is when they tend to be the most receptive if they've made it that far at that point, because now they need to actually get some action done. So the ostrich, head in the sand tends to be right in the middle of their auction process. At least that's what we were taught.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, Mike. So what you've demonstrated to everybody is that you're an amazing JV partner. So if somebody wanted to do a JV with you, do a deal with you, how would they get a hold of you?
Just Instagram, Kreative_Mike.
Fantastic. So they go follow Mike on Instagram, slide into his DMs, bring him deals. He's happy to help you. Is there a certain market that you focus on, or that you make like will you do JVs anywhere?
Yeah. I mean, especially when it comes to foreclosures, we can definitely do JVs, nationwide. I wouldn't be opposed to it. There's certain state laws and certain things that we have to abide by, but definitely I think it's a possibility. We just stopped an auction in Georgia right now, so we have a deal going on in Georgia, which is really cool. Which is a really, it's for another conversation, but I really structured it creatively, where there's not much money we're bringing to the table, and we're doing a wholesale on it. And the seller was cool with actually getting her most of her proceeds after we sell the property. So
that's fantastic. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I love it, Mike. Thank you so much for serving the community, building the community back up, and helping sellers through what is a very, very tough time in their lives. So thank you for serving the sellers and all of your JV partners. So much appreciated for coming on to the podcast and kind of breaking it down for everybody.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. And then everyone, remember that the Explain It podcast is here every Wednesday from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. 2 p.m. Arizona time. And we're here every week. So we will catch you guys next week. I think next week we're going to have Stella from Fractional. So if you're in the raising capital space, or if you need money for your deals, you should definitely be here next week as we talk about what that looks like. Thank you so much, Mike. And then we will catch you guys next week.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Bye.